What's up, guys? It is Corbin Stuckey of PixelTalk here.
And Stephen Van Ostenbridge of PixelTalk here.
Okay, look, you can just say Steven, not up. You could be a PixelTalk.
You're
a co-host.
I'm a co-host. Don't strip that away from me, man.
It was at that
I worked hard to get here.
Where Steven realized that he was finally a co-host.
My parents are finally proud of me for something. This is a big deal, man.
Is everything okay at home? So tonight we are going to review Halloween 2. We watched this last night. We actually tried to do a little review, but we had like a bit of a camera miss up. We lost some footage, but
yeah.
This is actually good that we had a night to really think about the movie we watched, because I actually got to watch the special features and how this movie was really made, and it's actually pretty interesting, and I really want to get into that and just the review itself. But Halloween 2 takes place moments after the first movie's ending. Laurie is taken to a hospital and Michael Myers is out. He's still killing people, and he decides to go to the same hospital that Laurie is at. And there's a reason why this movie explains a little bit about the first film that we didn't necessarily know. Probably not even John Carpenter at the time when he wrote this with Deborah Hill. And we really want to talk about that. What were your initial thoughts on Halloween 2?
First thing you notice is, this film had a significantly higher budget than the original one. $2.5 million as opposed to, I think, about $300,000 for the first one. Mm-hmm. And that kind of comes out in, first thing is the camera quality you see is a little bit better off. The original scene at the beginning where they're in the house from the end of the original movie, I believe is the same footage.
I
looks
think
very similar.
Some of it is the same footage, but the footage where it's like a wide shot of the house was definitely not in the first one.
Yeah.
I like how they refilmed some shots or maybe added some additional footage in there, but I think we both quoted how when he shot, he actually steps over the balcony edge.
Yep.
He
stands up while he's being shot. He has the mindset to step up and fall down off of the balcony.
That was pretty interesting. And like you were saying, the budget is definitely higher. You can actually see it in the intro itself. With the original Halloween intro, it was mainly just the camera going close in on a jack-o'-lantern, where in this one it's the same thing basically, but the jack-o'-lantern opens up and there's a skull in there. So obviously they wanted to really update that, and that wasn't the only thing that they really updated. They updated the song as well.
The song. Honestly, I feel like you and I kind of were of the same mindset of that. The song being updated, they kind of made it more syntho-pop. I guess they tried to modernize it a little bit. It's the original Halloween song with the piano. It's chilling. It's haunting. It's the definitive sounds of the Halloween franchise. And I feel like by modernizing it a little bit, it makes it a little bit too almost poppy in a sense, and it kind of detracts from the overall effect of the original. Just because that kind of piano just, being so serene and it just being so creepy was just really something that I loved about the original intro.
The piano one is timeless. You
Absolutely.
can hear that one and just think Halloween. When I hear this one, it definitely speaks that it's 1981, where everything
sounds like
was,
the intro to a Daft Punk song,
or
something.
a Michael Jackson song, or something like that. Which is, I don't know, for this, it doesn't work because the line that he says when the song first comes on is, "You don't know what death is."
Yeah.
And then the song plays. It's oh my god, that doesn't work.
Been trick or treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
It would have totally worked better with that original song, but obviously there's a lot about this movie that feels, after they got this big budget, it felt very studio-based. The first film obviously was directed by John Carpenter, and it's kind of his own thing. They did get a significant amount of money, not compared to this, obviously, but it was more of his round, pretty much, where he was kind of in charge, and it definitely felt like the studio took over. He actually did not come to direct this. He did write it again with Deborah Hill, but he wanted to do The Fog. He wanted to do other things, and he just didn't want to be just known as the Halloween guy. But there was even people were sued and stuff like that. There's an actual story to this, and I don't really want to get into all of that because I don't know all the details, but he was basically in a position where he found himself that he basically had to write Halloween 2, and he tried to add on to the mythos, I could tell, and I think for what we got, it's not bad. It's actually like one of the better sequels to Halloween.
That's not saying much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you can tell definitely that there is a lot of Hollywood stuff in here. Like there's a significant amount of product placement.
Yep.
With Coke.
Coca-Cola is everywhere. There's like 3 particular places where, and I'm going to kind of sidetrack from the Coke thing for a little bit, but the beginning, even though Carpenter didn't direct this, it's still got his fingerprints pretty much all over it. And the original Halloween kind of opens with, you see the world through Michael Myers' eyes. You see him walking around, grabs the knife, stabs his sister. This one starts in the similar way. After the initial scene in the house, and then they have the introduction, and then it starts where you're again seeing the world through Michael Myers' eyes. He comes into a house, and he picks up a knife off the counter, and you're, seeing it through what he's seeing. And that's where the Coke thing comes into play, because there's a box of Coca-Cola sitting on the countertop in the house. And then there were a couple of other instances, like in the hospital, Jimmy asks Laurie if, hey, you want me to get you a Coke? It's just little things kind of shoehorned in there.
Like,
that's probably what contributed to their $2.5 million that they got for it. But
I mean, it's like, granted, it's not uncommon to ask someone, like, can I get you a Coke? But, like, if you're in a hospital setting and you're maybe, like, a male nurse or just a nurse in general, you'd probably ask a patient if, like, can I get you any water or anything like that? It's just like,
can I get you a drink?
Yeah.
Like, can I get you something to drink?
Want me to get you a Coke?
I've been to a hospital a couple times over the course of my life. They never offer you Coke. It's always water, apple juice, orange juice, and those little cup things.
Now, there was a time in high school where I fainted during chorus. I was very...
You were in chorus?
Yeah, I was in chorus, and I was overheated. I was overheated, and I went to the nurse's office, and they offered me a Coke because they thought that I was, like, low on blood sugar.
Okay.
So that makes sense. We're talking way too much about this Coke thing. The movie. So the other stuff that is obvious that they really went rampant on the budget. There's explosions in this film.
There are explosions.
So obviously, there's the scene where Loomis thinks that he sees Michael Myers, but it's just another kid with the Star Trek mask, William Shatner, and it's just overkill with his kid.
Yep.
The cop runs him over into another vehicle,
and
then it blows up.
He gets, like, sandwiched between, like, a cop car and, like, an ambulance or something, and it just, blows up, and immediately, remember, you turned to me and were like, well, that's where the budget went, or something like that, just because, explosions and things like that, and even towards the end, there's another scene where there's a massive explosion at the hospital, and just... Those things aren't cheap, so you can kind of tell where that's going.
Speaking of the hospital, this is where the movie, I feel, starts to get more stereotypical. Now, what's great about the first Halloween film is it's alright for the teenagers to be stereotypical because they're teenagers, so they're written like that. So, teenagers are more prone to be oblivious to whatever is happening behind them or around them because they're in the middle of doing stuff. They're doing drugs, they're having sex with each other. It makes sense on paper. They're young kids.
Yeah.
But you're in this hospital setting and you see these you see these professional people. You see nurses, security guards, and everything, and it's just like they're not aware that Michael Myers is lurking about.
Someone is able to break into a hospital completely, like, with no alarms triggered or anything. He's just able to just break into a hospital quite easily. And like, the hospital in itself is bizarre, and just there's no one there. Like, Laurie's the only patient in this entire building. It's a big building, and it's just Laurie, like 3 or 4 nurses, 1 doctor, and 1 security guard, and then a couple of ambulance drivers. And it's just... I get it that Haddonfield's supposed to be a small town, but I mean, where the heck are all the people?
There's maybe 1 patient that comes in after Laurie, and we talked about this
we did.
during the film. The kid with the razor blade in his mouth.
Yep.
and we were talking about why that was maybe appropriate in the producer's eyes. I felt like it was more of a PSA in this film because obviously you have like these young kids who are going to see Halloween 2. They wanted to tell kids and parents like this is a thing that's going on in America where assholes are putting razor blades and apples and candy and stuff like that. It's never mentioned again.
Yeah, and that whole in my opinion, I mean, I get that if he's trying to make a PSA, it is effective because it is shocking and the cringe factor of it is immense. Like you and I both kind of went, ugh.
Yeah, it's like
it's very bloody and very, definitely a razor blade in some kid's mouth. But I feel like the whole thing didn't really need to be there because they focus on the kid, going to the hospital, getting checked into the hospital, and then leaving the hospital, and then that's it. You never see him again.
Yeah, I actually thought at first, like, oh, this is going to be like a character in the film, like the kid being chased by Michael Myers. Nope, he's just there for that one scene. Now, the kills for the most part in this film are good. They're better than the original one, but at the same time, I feel as though that's what makes the first one kind of better. Okay, let me say. The second one has better kills, but that doesn't make it better than the first one. It's just kind of gory. It makes it more of a slasher than it is a film.
It's got more bizarre kills. This one, I feel like, came out, I believe, after some of the other definitive slasher films came out. And I feel like it kind of tried to one-up them in the gore factor. The way Michael Myers is killing people is there's a little bit more variety to it. So for example, he scalds somebody with boiling water. He has somebody bleed out on the table. Just things like that where there's just immense amounts of blood and just like you see burnt faces and things like that. This just kind of ups the gore factor. In particular, that scene with the nurse bleeding out on the table.
Yeah.
In some of the cheesiest blood effect I've ever seen in my entire life.
It looks like buffalo sauce.
You even remarked on that while we were watching. It's like, she died because she was full of buffalo sauce or something like that. And
I want to get something to eat afterwards now.
Watching somebody bleed to death makes you hungry?
I'm a sick person.
Oh my god.
Well, buffalo sauce. Yeah, and it's just like I don't really know. I don't really have a comment to say about that. It does make the film somewhat more entertaining because I think one of the complaints that I had with the first film was, the kills just weren't that creative, but that wasn't the point of the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slasher film. You know, he's a knife wielding maniac guy. Like that's how he goes about doing his killing. Is the definitive picture of Michael Myers is him with the kitchen knives. And, he's going into the hospital and he's, doing it with different things. He's got, like, a scalpel or something like that he uses to kill people. He kills a couple of people, and this is, again, goes back to the gore factor by shoving syringes. Like, he stabs somebody in the eye with a syringe. Stabs somebody else in the temple with a syringe, which, if you're afraid of needles, is going to definitely make you cringe.
I'm very afraid of needles. I've been seeing so many scenes this week with needle-oriented stuff, and I just
never
going to
make it into baseball.
So this is what I want to talk about. There is a subplot that they put in this film, John Carpenter, as he's writing this, because obviously he wants to add more to the mythos of this thing he's created. Mm-hmm. So they decided to basically give more of a reason why Michael Myers is in this town. It kind of makes sense if you look back at the first film, but again, he's killing other people. Mm-hmm. So in this film specifically, they decide to create this backstory where Laurie is Michael Myers' sister, where after he was institutionalized, she was put up for adoption after the parents were killed or something like that. That's not really explained.
It's very briefly touched on,
and
then kind of swept under the rug almost.
Which that's interesting because it does give like a reason why he was targeting these girls, or specifically just her. I guess to an extent, but it doesn't really make sense also because how would he know that is his sister after like all these years? Because like it was like 15 years,
especially
right?
Since you are one, institutionalized, and two, they remarked that those records had been sealed by the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
So the only people who would have had access to them would have been the governor and the person that basically wrote the file. So Michael really would have had no real recollection or idea of the fact that Laurie even existed, especially since, when you're institutionalized in a catatonic state, as he was described by Dr. Loomis, you're not really going to be doing a whole lot of research into who your family is. And
there's other stuff that this movie tries to add, and this is one of the things I want to look up. It's the Samhain connection.
Mm-hmm.
So this is shoehorned in here, but it's not explained really what it is. So basically they're talking about how, like, can you explain it a little? Because I'm having, like, a hard time, like, it's not really touched upon a lot.
It's very briefly mentioned, and I feel like you really kind of have to do a little bit of research on your own or watch later movies to kind of get the whole picture with the Samhain thing. But it has something to do with some sort of pagan ritual where they were, I believe, from what the information is provided in the film, if I'm interpreting this correctly, they would sacrifice people and animals by setting them on fire, and they believed that they could tell the future based off of how these creatures would burn. And that's touched upon in the car with Dr. Loomis, and that's really all the information you get about the whole Samhain connection. He goes to the school, he writes that on the blackboard, and they touch on it briefly in the car, and that's really it. And I feel like, especially since this film was supposed to be the last Halloween movie, it kind of, in a sense, leaves it either up to interpretation or as a loose end, which, as a moviegoer, especially, if this is supposed to be the final chapter, kind of leaves you with more questions than answers when you leave the theater.
Speaking of that, this at the time was supposed to be the last Halloween film in terms of Michael Myers. Michael Myers dies in this film with Dr. Loomis, which I feel like is a pretty good close, if this was the actual close to, like, the Michael Myers saga. Because, we have Dr. Loomis, who is trying to hunt this beast or monster throughout this entire, like, series. And, he finally has to, like, sacrifice himself in order to, like, save Laurie and everything. I thought that was a really good send-off. I love the character Loomis. I thought it was, like, also
Loomis
really
is
good.
My favorite character in this as well.
And yeah, I just, I don't know. I thought it was a good ending to this series. Because obviously, they tried to end it. And with Halloween 3... I can't wait to talk about Halloween 3, because that is apparently nothing to do with Michael Myers. They wanted to go into this completely different direction, like an anthology series.
Witches or something like that. But
I'll have to show it to you. Like, it's going to be great.
I haven't seen it yet. But the kind of going back to the paganism thing, I think that's kind of used as a bit of a way to explain why Michael Myers is immortal. Because they mentioned in the movie a couple of times, one, he's no man. They talk about him as if he's an animal or a creature. And Laurie even remarks to Dr. Loomis, you remember?
Yeah.
He's like, why won't he die?
Yeah.
Because, he got shot 6 times. And
I shot him 6 times!
I shot him 6 times! What? I shot him 6 times! Come on. I shot him 6 times! This guy, this man, he's not human!
And then he shoots him another 5 times in the hospital, and he keeps going.
Even after the explosion, he just walks.
Even
like,
after
what the hell? Oh my god! So the scene where, like, he walks through the door at the hospital,
you literally, like, threw your arms in the air and were like, "What the hell?" Like
amazing. So for what this film is, obviously, John Carpenter did not want to make this movie.
Yeah.
He was kind of more forced to because of the obvious fame of the first one. And, I kind of respect him for wanting to do other stuff. And he did, like, make remarkable films after this, like The Thing and stuff like that. Which, by the way, The Thing was referenced in the first Halloween. The older Thing, not his Thing. So I think that's really cool that, like...
Yeah. I remember that.
That's like him saying, like, hey, guys, I want to do a Thing.
It was, like, on a TV in, like, a Passover shot.
So you could tell that, like, this was a guy that wanted to move on, because obviously the first one was kind of cheap, and he wanted to do other films. But people and producers really wanted a Halloween 2, and you could tell that he really made the best of it and tried to add more to his story, and this could have been worse. this was definitely a studio film. They actually almost tried to make it 3D, but for this budget, it would have been more expensive. Most of the film takes place at night, so it would have been really hard for them to do a 3D movie. And there's a lot of first-person shots, so it just wouldn't have made sense to make a 3D movie with that kind of cinematography. So I'm very glad they didn't make it 3D. That wouldn't have really made sense. But, this could have been really worse with the amount of studio involved. But I think it works really well next to the first one.
I don't know. I think some of the plot lines in this one are kind of irrelevant. A lot of the killing is... Well, I mean, I guess it's a slasher film, so you have to kind of give it that. But
right.
A lot of the killing seems like there's no real purpose to it. I mean, I get it that he's in the hospital, he's looking for Laurie. But, I mean, there's side plots between some of the nurses and, like... some of the other characters that just really don't need to be there. They're just hospital staff. You don't need to go into their love lives.
I mentioned this last night. I felt like the characters in the hospital are more like cattle than they are characters. Like, they're just there to get killed off.
Fodder, exactly.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really make any of their characters compelling. They wouldn't have been anyway, but it just doesn't make them really likable as characters.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of forced to know about that stupid... love connection or whatever. I want to talk a little bit more about the ending.
Okay.
I think it's a very fitting send-off for both the Loomis character and the Michael Myers character. If you haven't seen the film, basically, Michael chases them into a surgery room, or an operating room, and Laurie shoots him in the eyes, blinding him, and they turn on the surgical...
gas,
anesthesia gas, like ether and some other stuff and oxygen coming out of the wall, and ignite it, and Loomis sacrifices himself to kill himself and Michael Myers. And I think that's kind of almost poetic in a way, because Loomis kind of sees himself as responsible for the creation of this beast, like basically his escape. He's kind of, in a way, it's kind of blamed on him, which is not really fair to him, but it's kind of poetic to see him go out with the monster. And I really enjoyed the way that they ended that. The scene where he's walking out the door is a little bit cheesy, and Laurie kind of freaks out a little bit about it. But then he falls down on the floor, and Laurie's taken away in an ambulance. She's remembering the image of Michael Myers' burning body there, and contemplating, Michael Myers is finally dead. The town is safe. All my friends are dead. Push me to the edge. But it's poetic in a sense to kind of see him go out that way.
You could tell that they really wanted to leave this behind and focus more on other things. Which, like I said, I'm really excited because it's been such a long time since I've seen the third one, because this one has a huge cult following. People were like, we're gonna talk about that later, because I really want to talk about this, because I do want to dabber more into the information that's involved. But overall, Halloween 2, it works, and there are little things that I could have gone without, but, it's like I said, it's a film that really could have been, just bad. Where
it could have been bad.
Where they, under the hands of people that didn't understand what made the first one great, but there are parts where, it's pretty close to it for the most part. This is like what Predator 2 is to the first Predator, where, it's got some factors from the first Predator movie, but at the same time, not really likable characters. I am glad that it takes place in a city, though.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a mirror image, sort of.
The hospital kind of gives it a claustrophobic kind of sense in a way, where they can't really escape the hospital or whatever, because all their cars have the tires slashed and they can't get out of it. But I just felt like comparing it to the first one. The first one's classic.
Yeah.
The first one, it set the standard for all of the other slasher movies to follow it. And I felt like this movie was just, that'll do,
Yeah.
You kind of gave it higher marks than I did, just because I'm super critical of especially sequels.
Right, yeah.
And I just feel like it kind of was gory just for the sake of being gory.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And it really continues the story a bit, but a lot of the information provided is unnecessary.
It's forced.
it's forced.
Yeah.
I mean, the information about the paganism is good. You know, the Loomis send-off is very touching and very well done, in my opinion. But I feel like you probably could have edited out at least a half hour of that movie, and it probably would have been a better film, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's just me.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about the sequels. They're probably better than this.
All of the freaking sequels.
So yes, guys, that's our thoughts on Halloween 2 from 1981. Comment down below what you thought of Halloween 2. Please like this video, share it, and please subscribe to PixelTalk if you haven't yet for more movie reviews, game reviews, and so on. Thank you guys so much. I am Corbin Stuckey.
I'm Stephen Van Ostenbridge.
And this is PixelTalk. Yeah.
There's more where that came from.